What is the true measure of a person? Is it the balance in their bank account, the title on their business card, or the quiet, unseen choices they make when the world isn't watching? For Sterling Blackwood, the CEO of the global tech and manufacturing behemoth, Blackwood Industries, the world was a spreadsheet. Value was quantifiable. People were assets or liabilities. But a deep, corrosive loneliness had begun to eat at the foundations of his gilded world. He was the son of a brilliant but famously compassionate founder, and he feared he had honored his father's genius while betraying his soul. This fear led him to Athelgard, the flagship restaurant of his hospitality division, not as Sterling Blackwood, the titan of industry, but as Arthur, a retired history teacher on a modest pension. His disguise was meticulously crafted, a worn tweed jacket, soft with age, slightly scuffed leather shoes, and a gentle, unassuming demeanor. He was there to conduct a silent audit, not of the finances, but of the restaurant's character. Athelgard was a cathedral of gastronomy, a place of hushed tones and theatrical service. The general manager, a man named Gregory Thorne, was the high priest of this temple. Gregory moved with a reptilian smoothness, his smile a perfectly calibrated instrument used to extract larger tips and secure glowing reviews. He fawned over the wealthy patrons, his laughter echoing theirs, but his eyes, cold and sharp, missed nothing. He ruled his staff with a quiet terror, his corrections delivered in vicious whispers that left them pale and trembling. Sterling, now Arthur, was seated at a small, undesirable table near the service entrance, a place reserved for those deemed unimportant. It was the perfect vantage point. He watched the theater unfold, his cynicism growing with every fake smile. This was the world he had built, efficient, profitable, and utterly soulless. Then he noticed her. Her name tag read Elena. She was young, with kind, weary eyes, and a quiet grace that seemed out of place amidst the restaurant's cold perfection. While other servers moved with a frantic, performative energy, she moved with a calm intention. He saw her discreetly help an elderly woman cut her steak when she was struggling. He saw her distract a fussy toddler with a small, folded napkin animal so his parents could eat in peace. He saw her listen, truly listen, to a lonely businessman at the bar. She was a small, defiant flame of warmth in a cavern of ice. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his gut, that she would be the focus of his test. He had seen the way Gregory looked at her, with a particular dismissive contempt. She was a nail that refused to be hammered down, and Gregory clearly despised her for it. As his meal concluded, Sterling steeled himself. This was the part of his mission he hated most, the creation of a problem, a moment of manufactured crisis. He waved Elena over, his expression a mask of polite concern. "Miss, I seem to have a problem," he said, his voice soft and apologetic. "I've just realized I seem to have misplaced my wallet. I'm so dreadfully sorry. I don't know how I can pay the bill." The bill was a modest $78, but for the man he was pretending to be, it might as well have been a fortune. He watched her face, searching for the flicker of annoyance, the flash of cold judgment he had seen in every other employee. He saw neither. He saw only a moment of genuine, empathetic concern. Elena's first thought was not of the unpaid bill, but of the old man's profound embarrassment. She saw the flush on his wrinkled cheeks, the way his eyes darted away, unable to meet hers. She had seen that look before, on her own father's face, years ago, when he'd had to explain to her that he couldn't afford to send her to her dream college. It was the shame of a good man caught in a moment of helplessness. "It's all right, sir," she said, her voice a low, reassuring murmur. "These things happen. Please don't worry.
Let me see what I can do." She knew what she was supposed to do. Protocol was clear. Discreetly inform the manager, who would then handle the situation, which, with Gregory Thorne, meant a quiet but thorough humiliation of the guest, possibly involving the police. The thought made her stomach clench. Before she could move, Gregory materialized at the table, a shark drawn by the scent of trouble. He had likely been watching the entire exchange. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice smooth as silk, but with an underlying edge of steel. His eyes were not on Elena, but locked on Sterling. "The gentleman has simply misplaced his wallet, Mr. Thorne," Elena explained quickly, trying to shield the old man from Gregory's predatory gaze. Gregory's eyes narrowed, his polite facade cracking to reveal the cold contempt beneath. He looked Sterling up and down, taking in the worn jacket and the cheap-looking watch. "Misplaced it," he repeated, the word dripping with sarcasm. "Or perhaps never had it to begin with. Sir, Athelgard is not a soup kitchen. Our guests are expected to be able to afford the luxury of dining with us." "It was an honest mistake," Sterling said, playing his part, his voice trembling slightly. "I can call my son. He can come with a credit card. It will just take a little while." "We don't have a little while," Gregory sneered. "We have a business to run." He turned his venomous gaze on Elena. Did you not assess the situation? You are trained to spot potential liabilities. This is your table. This is your failure. The bill will be coming out of your wages, and you will escort this gentleman to the back office while we wait for the police." Fear, cold and sharp, shot through Elena. Her wages were already stretched to their breaking point. Her younger sister, Maya, was in the middle of a new round of treatments for a chronic illness, and the bills were piling up on their small kitchen table. Losing even $1 of her paycheck was a catastrophe. Losing her job would be a death sentence for their fragile financial stability. She looked at Sterling. He looked so lost, so frail. He reminded her of all the people the world had forgotten. The quiet, dignified people who were just one piece of bad luck away from disaster. She saw the system laid bare, the powerful preying on the weak, the assumption of guilt based on the clothes a person wore. And in that moment, something inside her snapped. It was not a loud, dramatic break, but a quiet, seismic shift. She looked directly at Gregory, her chin held high. "No." The word was quiet, but it landed with the force of a thunderclap in the hushed restaurant. Gregory stared at her, his face a mask of disbelief, as if one of the porcelain plates had suddenly spoken back to him. "What did you just say to me?" "I said no," Elena repeated, her voice steadier now, fueled by a righteous anger she hadn't felt in years. "I will not call the police on a man for making an honest mistake. And he will not be paying the bill. I will." She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out her own worn leather wallet. It contained exactly $82, her earnings from the last 2 shifts, money she desperately needed for Maya's prescription. "I will cover his bill, Mr. Thorne. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have other tables to attend to." She placed 4 $20 bills on the table, her hand trembling almost imperceptibly. She gave Sterling a small, reassuring nod, a gesture that said, "We are in this together." Then she turned her back on her stunned, furious manager and walked away, her head held high. She fully expected to be fired on the spot. What she didn't know was that she had just passed the most important job interview of her life.
Sterling Blackwood watched her walk away, a whirlwind of emotions churning within him. He had seen courage in boardrooms, the cold, calculated bravery of executives betting billions on a stock move. But this was different. This was the courage of the trenches. This was a young woman with everything to lose, sacrificing what little she had for a principle, for the dignity of a stranger. He had come here looking for the soul of his company, and he had found it, burning brightly in the heart of a single, underpaid waitress. The test was over. It was time for the reveal. He stood up, his posture changing. The meek, apologetic slump of Arthur, the retired teacher, fell away, replaced by the quiet, commanding presence of Sterling Blackwood. He was no longer a man reacting to the room. He was a man who owned it. "Mr. Thorne," he said, his voice no longer soft, but resonating with an authority that made every head in the restaurant turn. Gregory, who had been about to unleash a torrent of fury on Elena, froze. He turned to face Sterling, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. He saw not a penniless old man, but a figure of immense, intimidating power. The worn tweed jacket suddenly looked like a deliberate choice, not a necessity. "I believe we have some things to discuss," Sterling continued, his voice dangerously calm. "My office, tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp, and you will bring your complete, unedited financial ledgers for the last 2 years. Gregory's jaw went slack. "Your office? I don't understand. Who are you?" He allowed himself a small, cold smile. "My name is Sterling Blackwood. I am the CEO of Blackwood Industries, and as of about 5 minutes ago, I am the man who is going to dismantle your career." The name landed like a physical blow. The color drained from Gregory Thorne's face. He looked from Sterling to Elena, who had stopped and was watching with wide, disbelieving eyes. The entire horrifying picture began to assemble itself in his mind. The unassuming guest, the impossible bill, his own monstrous behavior. It wasn't a random incident. It was an execution. "And as for this," Sterling said, picking up the 4 $20 bills Elena had left on the table. He walked over to her, his every movement now watched by the silent, gawking staff and patrons. He held the money out to her. "I believe this is yours. Thank you for the loan and for the lesson." Elena stared at him, her mind refusing to process the seismic shift that had just occurred. The quiet old man was Sterling Blackwood, the owner of this restaurant, of the entire global company? It was impossible. I thought," she stammered. You thought I was someone in need," he finished for her, his voice softening. "And you acted with compassion and integrity. That is a currency, Miss Reed," she whispered. "Elena Reed. Miss Reed, that is a currency this company has been sorely lacking. We will speak more tomorrow, after I have dealt with Mr. Thorne." He turned and strode towards the exit, the entire restaurant parting before him like the sea before a prophet. As he passed the front desk, he paused and spoke to the stunned hostess. "And please have a car sent for Miss Reed. She is not to take the bus home tonight, or ever again." He walked out into the night, leaving behind a restaurant frozen in shock, a terrified manager on the verge of collapse, and a young waitress clutching $80 that had just bought her a new world.
The next morning, Gregory Thorne walked into the headquarters of Blackwood Industries like a man walking to his own execution. The opulence of the 55th floor executive suite, which he had always dreamed of entering, now felt like a mausoleum. Sterling Blackwood was not alone. Seated at the vast mahogany conference table were the company's CFO and the head of the legal department. The confrontation was short and brutal. Sterling didn't just fire him for his cruelty. He presented him with a preliminary audit, initiated the moment he'd left the restaurant, which had already uncovered a pattern of financial discrepancies. Gregory's kickback schemes and supply chain manipulations were not as well hidden as he thought. Faced with the threat of criminal prosecution, he signed a resignation effective immediately. his career in hospitality reduced to ash. An hour later, Elena Reed was shown into the same office. She was terrified, dressed in the simple, clean clothes she'd worn to her father's funeral, the only formal outfit she owned. Sterling stood not behind his desk, but by the window, looking out at the city. "Please, sit," he said, his voice gentle. "You are not in trouble, Elena. Far from it." He explained everything: his father's legacy, his search for the company's soul, the test. He laid out his disillusionment and his desperation to find someone, anyone, who still embodied the values his company was founded on. "You didn't just pass a test, Elena. You reminded me of what this company is supposed to be about." He then made her an offer that made the air leave her lungs. He wasn't offering her a promotion. He was offering her a partnership. "I am creating a new position," he said, his voice resonating with purpose. "Vice President of Employee Experience and Ethical Oversight. Your only job will be to be the conscience of this company. You will travel to our properties. You will listen to our people. You will identify and fix the systemic problems that allow men like Gregory Thorne to thrive. You will answer to no one but me." He slid a folder across the table. It contained a contract with a salary that made her visions swim. But the second document made her break down in silent, grateful tears. It was a charter for a private medical trust, the Maya Reed Foundation, fully and perpetually funded by Blackwood Industries to cover all of her sister's medical care for the rest of her life. "We take care of our own, Elena," Sterling said softly. "It's time we started acting like it." But her new role came with an immediate, formidable challenge. "There's a rot in this company, Elena, a rot that goes deeper than one corrupt manager. My father's greatest passion project was the Blackwood Foundation, our charitable arm. It was meant to be the soul of the company, but for the last 5 years it has been a black hole, consuming millions with no discernible results. The man running it, a corporate executive named Marcus Kane, is a master of excuses and polished reports. I suspect he is a more sophisticated version of Gregory Thorne. I have no proof, only a deep gut feeling that he is corrupt. Your first mission, should you choose to accept it, is to find the truth. Go into the foundation. Find out where the money is really going." He was giving her a new life, but he was also throwing her into a viper's nest. Marcus Kane was a powerful, politically connected man within the company. He would see her as a threat, an unqualified upstart. It was a test far more dangerous than the one in the restaurant. Elena looked at the folder, at the promise of a future free from fear for her sister. She looked at Sterling, this complex, lonely man who was entrusting her with the very soul of his empire. The fear was still there, but it was overshadowed by a fierce, new-found sense of purpose. "I accept," she said, her voice clear and strong.
Elena Reed's transition from waitress to vice president was a baptism by fire. The corporate world was a battlefield of unspoken rules and hidden agendas. Her new office, elegant and spacious, felt like a foreign country. Whispers followed her down the hallways. The story of the Waitress VP had become a corporate legend, and many of the polished Ivy League executives saw her as an insult, a whimsical folly of the CEO. Her primary antagonist was Marcus Kane himself. He was the polar opposite of Gregory Thorne. Where Gregory was a common bully, Kane was a silken predator. He greeted Elena with a dazzling smile and an outstretched hand, welcoming her to the team. "Elena, an absolute pleasure," he said, his voice a smooth, confident baritone. "We at the Foundation are thrilled to have your unique perspective. I am sure your grassroots experience will be invaluable." The condescension was subtle, wrapped in a veneer of professional courtesy, but it was there. He was a master of the corporate game, and he immediately began a campaign of polite, bureaucratic sabotage. He buried her in years of meaningless reports. He scheduled crucial meetings when he knew she was unavailable. He assigned her a junior analyst who seemed to be a spy, reporting her every move back to him. Elena knew she couldn't fight him on his own turf. She couldn't win a war of spreadsheets and PowerPoints, so she did what she had done at Ethelgard. She went to the ground floor. The Foundation's flagship project was a massive urban renewal initiative in a struggling neighborhood called an Oakhaven. According to Kane's reports, they had poured millions into job training programs, community centers, and small business grants. Elena went to Oakhaven, not in a town car, but on the city bus. She didn't announce herself as a VP. She was just a volunteer. What she found was a ghost town of good intentions. The community center was a shell, understaffed and underfunded. The job training program was a series of outdated online videos. The small businesses that had received grants had almost all failed within 6 months, crushed by debt from the high-interest loans the Foundation had arranged through a preferred lender. It was a Potemkin village of charity, a facade designed to look good on paper while achieving nothing. The money was disappearing. But where? She spent weeks talking to people, listening to their stories of frustration and broken promises. The common thread was a single entity, a construction and consulting firm called Apex Solutions. Apex had been paid millions by the Foundation to renovate the community center, to advise the small businesses, to implement the job training tech. But their work was shoddy, their advice was terrible, and their invoices were astronomical. Back at her office, Elena started digging into Apex Solutions. On the surface, it was a legitimate firm. But as she peeled back the layers of shell corporations, she found it. The sole owner of Apex Solutions was a holding company, and the holding company's primary shareholder was a private trust registered in an offshore account, and the beneficiary of that trust was Elizabeth Kane, Marcus Kane's wife. It was a kickback scheme of breathtaking audacity. Kane was awarding inflated, no-bid contracts to his own wife's company, bleeding the Foundation dry and enriching himself while the community of Oakhaven withered. Elena now had the what. She still needed the how. How did he hide it from the company's army of auditors? She knew the answer had to be in his office, in his private files. But Kane was smart, paranoid. Getting access would be impossible. She thought back to Ethelgard, to the quiet dignity of the people who worked in the shadows. She found the name of the head of the night cleaning crew at headquarters, a woman named Maria. Elena met her in a small coffee shop far from the gleaming towers of downtown. She didn't offer her money, she offered her respect. She told Maria what she had found, and she asked for her help. 2 nights later, during a routine system update that required a building-wide network shutdown, a fire alarm was tripped on the 48th floor, the Foundation's level. It was a false alarm, a minor electrical fault, but it required a full evacuation. As Marcus Kane and his staff filed down the emergency stairs, Maria's cleaning crew was let in to handle the water damage from the sprinklers. While Maria's team created a convincing scene of controlled chaos, Elena, dressed in a cleaner's uniform, slipped into Kane's empty office. She had 10 minutes. It was the longest 10 minutes of her life. She found it in a locked drawer in his desk, a single encrypted USB drive labeled personal. She knew this was it. She swapped it with an identical-looking blank drive and slipped out, her heart hammering in her chest, just as the all-clear was given.
The encrypted USB drive was a Pandora's box of corporate malfeasance. It contained everything: the hidden ownership documents for Apex Solutions, the inflated invoices, the offshore bank statements, and even a detailed ledger of bribes paid to city officials to approve zoning changes. Marcus Kane hadn't just been stealing from the foundation, he had been using it as a vehicle for a massive, systemic corruption scheme. This time, the confrontation was not in Sterling's office. It was in the main boardroom, in front of the entire executive board of Blackwood Industries. Elena, no longer the terrified waitress, stood at the head of the table. With a calm, methodical precision, she presented her findings. She laid out the entire conspiracy, not with anger, but with the cold, hard facts of a seasoned prosecutor. Kane, who had walked into the meeting expecting to swat away a minor annoyance, watched his entire world disintegrate. He blustered, denied, and threatened, but the evidence was irrefutable. By the end of the presentation, he was a broken man. He was not just fired, he was escorted from the building by federal agents, whom Sterling had waiting in the lobby. The downfall of Marcus Kane sent a shockwave through the company. It was a clear, unambiguous message: the age of impunity was over. The soul of Blackwood Industries was no longer for sale. In the aftermath, Sterling officially appointed Elena as the new president of the Blackwood Foundation. He gave her complete autonomy and a renewed, vastly increased budget. Her first act was not to write checks, but to go back to Oakhaven. She assembled a community board, giving the residents themselves the power to decide how the funds would be used. She didn't just rebuild the community center, she turned it into a thriving hub of real opportunity, run by the people, for the people. Her partnership with Sterling deepened, built on a foundation of shared values and mutual respect. He was the visionary with the resources. She was the anchor to reality, the one who ensured that every dollar was measured not just by its return on investment, but by its return on humanity. He had gone undercover searching for honesty and had found a leader. She had taken a desperate gamble for a stranger and had found her own power. The story of the waitress who became the conscience of a corporation became a guiding principle for Blackwood Industries. It was a constant reminder that true value is often hidden in plain sight, and that a company's greatest asset will always be the character of its people. Sterling Blackwood had set out to find a single honest person. In the end, he had rediscovered the soul of his company, and in the process found a way to honor his father's legacy at last.
What do you think drives people like Elena to do the right thing, even at great personal risk? Have you ever witnessed an act of integrity that truly inspired you? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. If this story about the power of character and the triumph of integrity moved you, please show your support by hitting the like button and sharing it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell for more real-life dramas that prove that a single person can change the world. Thank you for watching.